Hey friends, welcome. If it's your first time visiting, welcome. If you're returning, welcome back. So if you like the video, please give it a big thumbs up. And if you haven't already done so, please hit the subscribe button. So today's video is going to be answering a couple questions. We're going to do it in one video. So the two questions are, how do you put epoxy on a glitter tumbler? And the other one is, what is the best epoxy to use? So I have a glitter tumbler here all ready to go, and this is the one that we're going to put some epoxy on. However, first let's talk about, so here are three of my cup turners. I have one more, it's in the garage. So as you can see, this is a very messy hobby. So this table is for nothing but doing glitter cups. So the cup turner, you can get these on Amazon, and also there are a lot of crafters that build them themselves and sell them. So this one my husband made for me, and I like it. It's nice and tall, so I can put stuff with a handle on it. My husband also made this one. This one is short and just made to be kind of out of the way. And then this one I bought on Amazon. The one that's in the garage is a Spin-It. Sorry, couldn't think of the name for a second. And my husband's changing that into a regular cup turner. So the Spin-It you can buy at Michael's. You can also buy it at Hobby Lobby. At Michael's you can get it with a 40% off coupon, but I will tell you, for me personally, it is definitely not my favorite. Cups fall off of it, and it's good for like lighter cups, for wine glasses, but any type of regular stainless steel tumbler I've had just fall right off of it. So just know that you can get it there, you can get it quick, but definitely not my choice. So you can see, I mean, this is really messy in here. Glitter, epoxy, these things, you know, I mean, this table's very used, so it is, you know, definitely a messy hobby. So please know that wherever you're going to do it. And having ventilation, now I was doing it in my craft room. I had plastic down on the floor. It was kind of a pain in the neck. I put on fans, open up the windows for ventilation. I've moved it to my back porch, which is really so much better. I have good ventilation, and it's just not as much of a nuisance. However, you need good ventilation, but you also have to use a respirator mask. So I see people on YouTube, and I would never have you talk bad about anybody by any stretch of the imagination, you know. However, please, I think that it's really pretty irresponsible for people to show doing epoxy without wearing gloves and without wearing a respirator, because it is a chemical, it can be harmful, and in order to have a fun craft that you can continue and do for a long period of time, you need to do it safely. So you need to wear a respirator, you need to wear gloves, and if you are sanding a product that has epoxy on it, you should be wearing a dust mask of some sort while you're sanding, okay? Now, so these are cup turners. Like I said, you can get them, you know, on Amazon. You can get the Spin-It, which I don't think does a great job, but you can, the ones from Amazon come pretty quickly also. So these are made so that your epoxy, which is self-leveling, just, it spins it and just keeps it level and even, and allows it to get that nice smooth finish to it. All right, so there's several different things that I use. So they pretty much have a pull like this. So I have a bunch of different footballs that I put on them. I have things like this that I have bought off of Amazon. Sometimes they still don't really fit well, and I've had to like put some cloths in there to sort of make up some room for things. You know, people get very creative when it comes to how they keep stuff on their tumblers, and there's so many people with great ideas. My husband makes things for me, like this is what I use for martini glasses, and my cup just goes in here. I have this one that I use when I'm making like bullets, and I also use it for super small like champagne flutes. So there's that. Now, besides your gloves and your mask, you're going to put your epoxy on with either your glove finger, or you can use these silicone spatulas. You can get them on Amazon. I get them at the Dollar Tree, whichever you want. So you want something to mix your epoxy in. So you can mix your epoxy in a cup, a medicine cup. You can use like a wood stirring stick, or like I said, you can use the silicone spatula. You can buy silicone sticks. There's so many different things. I also like to use these silicone cupcake liners. I mix my epoxy in these, and then after it dries, I just peel the epoxy off. Epoxy peels right off of silicone. So that's why I have all these silicone mats down here, so that I can peel the epoxy off of them. But stuff like this is reusable, which is very nice because, you know, it's a big footprint when you're throwing stuff away a lot. So as far as what kind of epoxy to use, so this is Envirotech Light. It's almost empty, and I had big gallons of it, and I would pour it into here and just use these to measure it out. Now, with the epoxy, there's so many good different kinds. You will find people who do tumblers that sell their own. That is great. The biggest things with epoxy is you want to know how to mix it. It generally comes in two parts, your resin and your hardener, and some of it is by weight, some of it is 2 to 1, some of it's 1 to 1. I personally like 1 to 1. I think it's just the easiest way to go. So you want to know how it's measured, and the simpler the better. The other thing is you want to know for your area. So if you live someplace that is extra hot, extra humid, extra cold, anything like that, then research for epoxy that works with that odd temperature that you're in. I live in Florida. We have a lot of humidity, but I really tend to not have any trouble with that. Now, I am going to be moving to the Pro Marine and trying it, seeing how it works. I've tried Alumilite. It was fine also. The biggest thing that you want is that it is FDA approved to be around food. Now, food safe for epoxy doesn't mean that you can put food on top of it and eat off of it, but it means that it is safe to go around food. So it can go on the outside of a container and such like that. But it's very important that it's FDA approved to be around food. Now, for me, I only buy epoxy that's made in the USA because I live in the USA and I want epoxy that adheres to the standards of my country. If you don't live in the USA, then you might want to, get epoxy that's made in your country so that you know that it is adhered to your standards. If your country doesn't have specific standards for food grade epoxy or allowed to be around food epoxy, then, you know, certainly choose some from a country that does have that. Other than that, honestly, as far as the epoxy goes, it's going to be whatever works for you. So, very important with epoxy, you want to make sure that you mix it correctly, and you don't want to get any water in it, because epoxy and water do not mix, and if you don't mix it correctly, your epoxy will not harden. And then some other things that I use are, I use baby wipes, I have alcohol, I clean all my cups with alcohol prior, and baby wipes are great for like cleaning up places that you don't want epoxy. So I hope that helps. All right, so I'm going to put this on a stand and we're going to mix epoxy. All right, so between the muffling that happens wearing the respirator and the noise of the cup turner, you really could barely hear me. So I'm going to do this part as a voiceover. Now, on my epoxy, I'm getting to the end of it, so I can't really use the pumps anymore. I don't get nice, clean pumps. So I'm just going to pour it. Now, when you're pouring it, you're going to use 2 separate containers. You need to measure them out evenly. You're going to do part A in one container and part B in another container. So here I'm actually pouring quite a bit. I end up doing 50 cc's of each, and that's only because I have a couple other projects that I'm working on other than what I'm showing you. So I will only be using maybe about 20 cc's, 30 at the most on this cup, because it is glitter, and that first coat over a glitter tumbler does take a bit more. So after I measure it out evenly, then I'm going to take 1 cup and I'm going to pour it into the other one. And then I'm going to stir that around for a while. Now, depending on epoxy, you're going to be stirring for 3 to 6 minutes total. Now, then after I stir it, I like to transfer it again back into the other cup and just sort of give it that swirl back and forth. Now, I don't do this when I'm using my pumps, because I will pump it out like 2 pumps of A, 2 pumps of B, then 2 pumps of A, 2 pumps of B to give it that mix. But when I'm measuring it into cups, I do like to switch it back and forth. And then I'm going to stir it good for, again, 3 to 6 minutes, depending on what your epoxy says to do. Now, some like to warm their epoxy, and I do. You can warm your epoxy in several ways, and this is personal preference. I've heard some people like to put their epoxy in a warm bath. Others like to take their heat gun and point it at the bottom of the cup. I just give mine a couple blasts with my heat gun. For me, I feel like warm epoxy works really, really well. Now, with my tumbler, I am just going to do a nice smooth coat across the entirety of the surface. So it's really important that you are getting it on the entire cup. So this is your first coat over your glitter. And in order to put any decals, you want a nice smooth surface. So just go nice and even, a little bit at a time. You don't need a lot, just go a little at a time, and you just take it through and make sure that every bit of it is covered. I'm gonna eventually end up having to stop and switch out the football on this. So this tumbler's not running great. It's not the tumbler. It is because the football has been on there for a while and it's loose inside. So I just have to switch it to a different football, which I'll do so that it can spin well. All right, so I have another football on it. You can see it makes all the difference in the world. Sometimes those footballs, after a while of turning, the inside of them gets a little tore up and then it doesn't fit snugly against the pole on your turner. So just make sure that you have everything covered. You want your entire cup to be covered, and then after that this tumbler will spin at least 4 to 6 hours depending on your epoxy before you take it off and do any next steps. For me, this will just spin overnight and I will do something else with it tomorrow. All right, well listen, I hope that this helps and maybe answered some questions, and I hope you have a blessed and beautiful rest of the night. Thanks, and if you haven't already done so, please hit the subscribe button. Bye.